on that note, let's welcome Mr. David Crow from the Faulkner County Tea Party back to the show. David, it's always great to have you on.
Hey, Paul, thank you so much on that chug ho thing. That is classic Dan Douglas. Man, that guy is he's out there. What is it? 5 votes, and we would have not had Dan Douglas back in the legislature.
Yeah, he barely won his primary. Yeah, and the thing is we actually may be having State Representative Dan Douglas on the program soon. Which is it's that's in the works. But to talk about an unrelated issue, I'm sure we'll get into our differences on taxes. You say one thing about Dan Douglas is that his monologues are comedy gold. I mean, as we've demonstrated, and he certainly seems like he is a nice guy. It's just I disagree with the policies that he advocates. So.
Right, exactly. He seems to be a nice guy. He spoke at the FOIA committee this month, and interesting fellow.
Yeah, and that's that was what I was interested in having him on and talk about that FOIA situation. So, David, first of all, I'm totally excited about being in Conway today at noon at Larry's Pizza. I want to invite everybody out there to come and hear the great work that you guys are doing at the Faulkner County Tea Party. Can you tell us a little bit about what's on the agenda for today?
Well, actually, you're on the agenda. That's you're the main guy that's going to be on today. We'll have our opening. We'll have a few comments about things going on around the city, but then we'll be turning it over to Paul, and we're going to have a heavy dose of Paul Harrell.
Yeah,
I'll be taking. So looking forward to it.
I'll be taking a lot of questions, I'm sure, and that's kind of the. I mean, I've got some remarks prepared, but I've also really enjoyed just taking questions from the audience. You know, every time I talk down there, it's always a good time, and it's good to be around people who are engaged and want to really just guard the liberties. Of the people, and they recognize that government tends to grow and, drown out those liberties. And so, and I know that's what you've been fighting for a very long time. I also understand that you and your wife, Janet, recently celebrated your anniversary. I want to say congratulations. How many years was it again?
46. We had 46 years of wedding, of anniversary.
Wow.
And amazing. I mean, I everybody knows me, and Janet knows that I'm married up in a big way. And so, thank goodness for Janet. I just so love her. She's so special.
46 years. That is amazing. Congratulations on that, David. David, I wanted to know, have you been following any of this Trump tariff situation? What are your thoughts on it? Because, in conservative circles, you'll hear some people say, conservatives shouldn't support tariffs, or they shouldn't support, what the president is doing, what some people have called economic saber rattling, trying to get America a better deal. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I totally am a Trumpster. I totally back everything he's about. Trump is got an agenda, which is make America great again, and I think I follow everything he does, and I endorse literally everything. Somehow, some ways he goes about it, I would necessarily do it the same way. But let me tell you what, the guy is incredibly successful. So go ahead, raise those tariffs on China, go to 25%. Doesn't bother me at all. And I'm a happy camper that he's about doing the things he's doing, because I think his ultimate goal is to go to a level playing field. Let's erase all tariffs on both sides of the, on the agenda, and not only with the EU, but everybody. And I just think that's the best path to take and put us on a level playing field. And in each of those cases, we're going to win.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's what they're afraid of. The goal of the level playing field is certainly where we want to be. And
right.
I find it, I find it when Democrats and both Republicans are upset, it more often than not, Donald Trump's doing something right. He's doing something that.
Exactly.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to everybody out there. Thanks for starting the beginning of your day with us here. It's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine. We want you to help us to do that. By you simply listening to the program, you're already helping us. So thank you for that. The phone number, 870-275-9799 to call or text. Sound off over on the Facebook or YouTube page. It's Conduit News, facebook.com/Conduit News, or the YouTube channel is Conduit News. Wow, you know, I get the feeling. I know we have been talking a lot about the mainstream media the last couple of weeks, and really just how deceptive they are. I'm to the point now where some of these mainstream media people, I think they are so anti-Trump. It's almost like they are, fighting for their, their relevancy. They certainly are fighting for their relevancy, but in fighting for their relevancy, they're also fighting for their jobs in a way. Because if these mainstream media outlets are ineffective, eventually it gets down to dollars and cents. I mean, if their ratings are terrible and nobody's listening to them and nobody's watching them and more people are getting their news online, eventually it gets down to, well, what are we paying you for? I think that's a component that a lot of people maybe don't even think about when it comes to why the press is so, desperate here in a lot of ways. So that's just an observation that I had this morning when I woke up. I will tell you that we have heard a lot of talk about a blue wave. We've heard people predict that it's going to happen. In the same way that the media seems to be fighting for relevancy, you have the people on the left that I believe think that this is the most important midterm election of their lifetime because they have to get the House back. And if they don't get the House back, President Donald Trump's agenda will continue. And if President Donald Trump's agenda continues, and he continues to expose the hypocrisy, he continues to stand up for the average American, Donald Trump making his money in the service industry, meaning he knows the benefits of a powerful, strong middle class, because if the middle class wasn't there, then they weren't using his services, his hotels, his casinos, and it hurt his bottom line. He understands what a real strong economy looks like, not the fake economy where it's only Wall Street that sees these numbers that are, positive. He understands that. But anyway, the Democrats have to get control of the House. That's what they're telling. I mean, and really and truly, in order to stop the Make America Great agenda, they do have to get control of the House. They've got to stop whatever he's doing. They got to stop this anti-status quo president from exposing the hypocrisies and the flaws of the system, the anti-status quo president that exposes much of the theater that goes on between the play acting that goes on between Democrats and Republicans that act like they're opposed to one another often, but in reality it's just a big front. It's just a fraud. It's just not real. I mean, it's in many cases the establishments of both parties don't have the interest of the American people at heart. They have the interest of the swamp at heart. He's exposing that. They got to stop that. With that being said, there was a big election last night in Ohio. The front page of the Drudge Report says that Republicans held Ohio. The mainstream media says the race is too close to call because of provisional ballots. Here's what the front page of the Drudge Report looks like. Let's look at this. It just says Republicans hold Ohio. A lot of people are really excited about that. There was also elections in Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, Washington. I'm told that Chris Kobach, who got the endorsement of President Donald Trump, he is in the lead by almost a full point. I think 0.7. He's up 0.7. So it's interesting that Matt Drudge's headline is Republicans hold Ohio, but if you actually click on this, it takes you to the Columbus Dispatch, and it says that the 12th Congressional District special election is finally here, and then you click on the updates. The 12th Congressional District, Troy Balderson declares victory, but ballots in tight race remain to be tallied. Troy Balderson apparently overcame a huge deficit among early voters to narrowly beat Democrat Danny O'Connor in Tuesday's nationally watched 12th Congressional District special election. However, the results won't become official until more than 8,500 additional ballots are tabulated in 10 days, those from provisional voters and absentee mailed in from overseas and the military. Once that final total is calculated, Ohio law requires a mandatory recount if the margin is within 0.5 points. So last I saw, he was at 50.2%, and the other guy was at 49%. So it is definitely a close race. You have the Democrat here, Danny O'Connor in Ohio, not conceding, just to give you an update on all of this. But Troy Balderson saying, I won, let's move forward, we're going to continue to make America great again. So we'll see, but I will tell you this, the Democrats are not happy this morning. They would certainly rather be in the lead than not. So is there going to be a blue wave? I mean, this seat was traditionally Republican. I think the Republicans have had this particular seat in Congress since the 80s. So it would have been a big deal. It would have shown a big tide change if the Democrats had won here. And who knows, maybe with the provisional. Now, the 8,500 additional ballots that are out there, that's even changed from this morning when I got up a couple hours ago, where it said there were only 3,000 ballots out there left to be calculated, or tabulated, rather. So we'll wait and see, but it doesn't look like, I mean, if this news is, if what is apparent turns out to be true, then it would seem that the Republicans have held Ohio, and that things are going to, things don't look too good for Democrats. Things don't look too good. Here's the question. Historically, when you have this midterm election, it never goes good for the new president. Historically, that's the trend. That there's this kind of the pendulum tries to swing in the opposite direction, okay, of whatever the president is doing. Now, I will caution you that Donald Trump is not a typical president. This is not a typical time. That is apparent, right? We can get this is not a typical time. And in the traditional theater of Republicans and Democrats and things like that, that's certainly the case, certainly is true. But I will remind you, in 2016, they told you that Hillary Clinton was going to be your next president of the United States, and President Donald Trump did not have a chance. All of the polls said she had commanding leads, and there was no way he was going to win. There was no way. They were saying, this is the end of the Republican Party. Well, I mean, then they were all wrong. You know why they were wrong? Because President Trump said it last week. Last week at the rally in Pennsylvania, he said that these polls were trying to suppress voters and that the American people simply refused to listen and believe the media. Now, see, we're back to the media. They refused to believe the media. They went out and voted anyway. if that happens again, and the Trump base is still enthusiastic, if the Trump base is still enthusiastic and still gets out in votes, I mean, I think you hold the House. Yeah, I think you hold the House for sure. But they're going to certainly pull out all the stops, and they're going to continue to run people out of restaurants they disagree with. They're going to continue to try to silence debate. Speaking of silencing debate, in a follow-up story over these Silicon Valley tech giants coordinating together to essentially uniformly ban Alex Jones and InfoWars on the same day or within 12 hours of each other, showing a massive amount of coordination. Anybody who's for freedom of thought, free exchange of ideas, you got to wonder, are you next? Are you the one that's going to be censored next? Well, the fact is, it kept going yesterday. You know who was next? Libertarians. That's right, libertarians. The head of the director of the Ron Paul Institute, Congressman Ron Paul, who say what you. I mean, I know. I personally think Ron Paul is fantastic, but a lot of people disagree with libertarian philosophy, that sort of thing. But you got to respect Ron Paul's service to his country as a congressman from Texas, and how he always, called the Republicans out when they were going against the interest of liberty and limited government, or the monetary policy and the Federal Reserve. Just really, really good, solid stuff. Well, the director of the Ron Paul Institute, he's been banned. It's sad. Daniel, Scott Horton Show, at Scott Horton, the new editorial director, and Daniel McAdams, director of the Ron Paul Institute. They're now gone. A coordinated attack by media giants Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and Google. Various social media accounts against Alex Jones were banned or suspended in a matter of hours. Now Twitter is moving on these people. On Monday, Twitter suspended the editorial director of antiwar.com, Scott Horton, former State Department employee Peter Van Buren, and Dan McAdams, the executive director of the Ron Paul Institute. Yeah, Dan McAdams. Improper language against journalist John M. Katz is what they're citing. Then we have this that's been blocked by Facebook. Go to this Breitbart article. Now, this is actually a new term. Look at this headline here. Midterm meddling. Midterm meddling. Facebook blocks Republican candidate's ad because she references socialism and how her family had to flee Cambodia, and it was talking about how bad socialism was. Now, if we can just look down at Venezuela, what's going on down there, and you can kind of figure things out. Socialism pretty bad. The left doesn't want you to look at current experiments with socialism, do they? Facebook has banned Republican congressional candidate Elizabeth Heng's campaign video ad about communist crimes that led her family to flee Cambodia for the U.S. So, wanting to come to this country, claiming the platform doesn't allow shocking, disrespectful, or sensational content. Elizabeth Heng, who's running for California's 16th congressional district seat, made the video about her parents' escape from mass murderer by the Khmer Rouge communists in the 1970s. Or Khmer. However, according to the Christian Post, Facebook deemed the video to be shocking, disrespectful, or sensational and refused to allow her to run the video as an ad on the platform. She wrote on Twitter, Facebook rejected my video because it was too shocking for their platform, referring to the scenes of horrific events my parents survived in Cambodia. Facebook, do you think it's right to censor history? Yes, they do. Yes, this is going to continue. This is just going to get worse. And, I mean, look, we were talking with Brian Maloney on the program yesterday. I don't know if you've seen that yet. Oh, okay. Thank you, Joe. So Facebook has since reversed course on its decision, saying it is clear the video contains historical imagery relevant to the candidate's story. Okay, so Facebook reversed its decision, thankfully. Is it obvious, though, that they have these snowflake? To me, it's obvious they have snowflake click-happy millennials who are flagging content. They have no idea. They are uneducated people. I think whoever they have, going over these, if something gets flagged, this gets flagged, let's review it. It's clear that their employees are incompetent and have an agenda and are products of this belief that, because you're a Republican, we need to silence you. So I don't care if you're telling me factual information. You're a Republican and you're evil, and therefore we don't need to have you on the platform. I'm kind of alarmed at the amount of people who are not as worried as I am. And maybe it's because I'm in media about this idea of banning or shadow banning and things like that. It's a really big deal. And while, yes, Facebook is a private company, Google's a private company, these are private companies, you do get to the point where I do think antitrust laws, monopoly laws could be put into play here. I mean, I've asked the question before, at least once, but it's never talked about. It's never talked about the corner on the market that they actually have here. It is obvious that Facebook believes that their platform was too open and had too much freedom and gave too much leeway to their users. And they believe that their open and free platform, or what was more open and more free, is why Hillary Clinton is not in the White House. That's what they believe. And this is the fallout. And it's coordinated. It is coordinated. And it comes a week after President Trump says that the media is the enemy of the American people. Sarah Huckabee Sanders refuses to walk that statement back and dresses down Jim Acosta and exposes the media for being sensationalist and emotionally driven, trying to get these ratings, hanging on for their jobs because they are hanging on to this concept that they are relevant. Middle America doesn't seem to care as much about the East Coast media elites as we used to. And that is driving them nuts. We're going to take a break. Phone number is 870-275-9799. This is Conduit News Radio. We've got a great show for you, by the way. We're going to talk to Amy Freeman from Patriots of Act 746 coming up here at the bottom of this hour. Then we've got Congressman French Hill on his race in the 2nd Congressional District. And in the context of protecting the House majority, the House Republican majority, it's a big race here in Arkansas. So the people in the 2nd District in central Arkansas need to pay attention. French Hill needs to go back to Washington, D.C. and defeat his Democrat opponent because, this Make America Great agenda so far is going pretty great, pretty fantastic. And it needs to keep going to try to undo not just what President Obama, did, but it seems that the status quo, the swamp, is being drained and exposed for what it is, and that's a good thing. We got to take a break. Back in a minute. The one thing that no other Democrat or Republican has done. I mean, whether it's moving the embassy to Jerusalem like everybody said they were going to do but never did, and he did it, or whether it's these tariffs, or whether it's, when he came back from the Helsinki summit, everybody, Democrats and Republicans, were both critical of him. And it's like, okay, well, you must have done something right then, Don. Right. I mean, it's fascinating to watch. I will say that much. It's fascinating to watch him govern. And then, of course, you have the leftists in the media who are, continuing to lie to people, work people up in a frenzy. They want the ratings. They want this emotional-based coverage. And so I'm curious, though, the Koch brothers this week, they came out very critical of the president, saying that they have got to stop him from, enacting his agenda. What were your thoughts on that? Were you surprised?
Well, actually, it wasn't just this week. The Koch brothers have been about this for quite some time. I don't think that they really truly favored having Trump in the office at all. And
need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. The phone number 870-275-9799. This from the Washington Examiner. Hospitals to post prices online under a new Trump administration rule. That's right, hospitals. You're going to have to post your prices, not just give them over when people ask for them now. That's the gist of this story. We've talked a long time here in Arkansas about hospital math and how ridiculous it is. How it's a phony version of math, the way hospitals calculate their losses as nonprofits, and how they're not actually losing money, but they claim they are. And then they go before government panels and committees and essentially present this as evidence why uncompensated care is a problem, when it's not near the problem that it in reality that it really is. So this is a good development here. Hospitals will be required to post the prices they charge for surgeries and other medical procedures online under a new Trump administration rule. The rule, finalized on Thursday by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, is part of the Trump administration's goal toward value-based care. Speaking of value-based care, we've told you about Dr. Keith Smith before from the Oklahoma Surgery Center. Remember him? Let me give you a refresher course. This is Dr. Keith Smith from the Oklahoma Surgery Center.
And my wife's a CPA, my middle son's an engineer, and I grew up with friends who are now mathematicians. So imagine a mathematician, engineer, and CPA in a room interviewing for a job. And the interviewer says, "What's 2 plus 2?" And the mathematician thinks and says, "Well, it depends on your definition of 2. And the engineer says 4. And the CPA says, "Well, what would you like for it to be?" That is really the way that the hospitals and the insurance company accounting works. There's a basically make things look like they want them to look. In the last video blog, we talked about the $100 aspirin and why the hospitals need all of that red ink to maintain and justify their not-for-profit fiction. The insurance companies have another side. They're actually happy to pay giant prices. This is so counterintuitive, and this is hard, but we've put it under the heading repricing. Repricing claims is a source of giant revenue for the insurance companies, and here's how that works. Basically, the higher the hospital charge is, the more the insurance company makes. You would say, wait a minute, insurance company collects premiums, they pay claims, they keep the difference, that's their profit. And not exactly, there's more to it. It's much more complicated. Most of these health insurance claims in the United States by private insurance are actually paid through employer groups. And an employer group will have an employee that has surgery and they have a $100,000 bill, and the insurance company will reduce the bill to, say, $20,000. The hospital has their $80,000 fictitious red ink that they love and need so badly. But the insurance company has a contract with this employer. Insurance would, PPO would say, well, we've saved you, employer, $80,000. So we're now here to collect our percent of savings, our 28%, or whatever the repricing fee is. What happens then is the employer, thinking they've saved $80,000, then, per the terms of the contract, pays the insurance company a percentage of that savings. If you think through that, you realize insurance companies are actually inclined, perversely inclined, to seek out the most gigantic bills that they can find. It would actually be in their interest to ask the hospital administrator to mark this bill up to double, make it a $200,000 bill, because then they're repricing a much, much larger amount. This is simply advanced knowledge, insider ticket scalping is basic.
Yep, that's Dr. Keith Smith from the Oklahoma Surgery Center. We have booked him on the program Monday morning at 7:30. We'll be talking, doing an interview with Dr. Keith Smith from the Oklahoma Surgery Center. I'm sure hospital math will come up. This guy is, he's ratting out the corporate healthcare industry, isn't he? Good for him. Good for him. His videos are fantastic. He's got a ton of blogs out there. Ton of vlogs, if you will. We'll be right back with Amy Freeman. Don't go anywhere. The one thing that no other Democrat or Republican has done. I mean, whether it's moving the embassy to Jerusalem like everybody said they were going to do but never did, and he did it, or whether it's these tariffs, or whether it's, when he came back from the Helsinki summit, everybody, Democrats and Republicans, were both critical of him. And it's like, okay, well, you must have done something right then, Don. Right. I mean, it's fascinating to watch. I will say that much. It's fascinating to watch him govern. And then, of course, you have the leftists in the media who are, continuing to lie to people, work people up in a frenzy. They want the ratings. They want this emotional-based coverage. And so I'm curious, though, the Koch brothers this week, they came out very critical of the president, saying that they have got to stop him from, enacting his agenda. What were your thoughts on that? Were you surprised?
Oh, well, actually, it wasn't just this week. The Koch brothers have been about this for quite some time. I don't think that they really truly favored having Trump in the office at all. And ever since he's been there, they've been against most of what Trump is about. And that's regretful. They've literally raised billions of dollars to fight the Trump agenda. And it saddens me to see what the Koch brothers have done. I mean, it really, essentially, the Koch brothers are about, their empire, and they want to keep it the way it is. Not only do they want to avoid the tariffs, they want cheap labor coming across the border. They're against a border wall, and so the Koch brothers. Now, do they actually? To what a lot of people think.
Do they actually say that? Specifically about the border, because I've read stories, but did they actually say we don't want the border wall because we want to keep wages low? I mean, are they that transparent about it, or do we have to read between the lines?
Not necessarily. We have to read between the lines. Now, Tim Phillips has come out, and he's been, he's been on all the networks, especially the Fox News network, and they've spoken out against the tariffs, but they've also implied and stated some things regarding the open border, and that they see it as a negative, most of what Trump is doing. So they're doing it sort of backdoor, which oftentimes is what their agenda and the approach that they take. They not only, they're the ones that put all the money in AFP, and AFP does a lot of their bidding for them as well, because Tim Phillips is their president with AFP. So a lot of what the Koch brothers want to do is what AFP does on the front line with the movement, and I've seen that happen over the years, and it's very regretful what has happened with that organization.
So the border situation.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to remind you this program, or this portion of the program, rather, is brought to you by the Patriots of Act 746. Now, you've heard me talk about them before. They are on a mission to educate the people of Arkansas about your Second Amendment rights, specifically your Arkansas rights when it comes to what the Arkansas Constitution says, when it comes to what Act 746 says, and the decriminalization of firearms and the possession of firearms here in the state, the concept of constitutional carry, the concept of permitless carry, meaning you don't have to have a permit to carry open or concealed, if you read what the law says, and they are out to educate. So go to Facebook.com, search for Patriots of Act 746, and ask to be a member of this group and join the online sensation today. They really are educating. They hold meetings. They have chapters across the state, and it's just been a thrill ever since we started interviewing the Patriots of Act 746. When I became a member of the group, it's just great. The very fantastic people. One of those individuals who's fantastic, her name is Amy Freeman, and she joins us now. She's a member of the Patriots of Act 746. Amy, welcome to the program.
Hello, how are you doing, Paul?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thanks for having me today.
Yes. So, Amy, tell us about how you first found out about Patriots of X746?
Well, I wasn't actively seeking out the group, but as usual in the evenings when you're sitting on the couch next to your spouse and you're comparing articles on Facebook, he says, look at this article. And I looked at it, and I was like, well, what's this group? And he said, it's Patriots of X746. I'm like, oh, okay. And so I started looking into it, and I joined the main chapter. And, of course, when you're invited into the group, you have the option of choosing a chapter in your regional area. I happen to live in Old Trough, Arkansas, in Independence County, so I am a member of the Northeast Arkansas chapter. I will say this, it has pretty much changed my life. I mean, I've lived in the area for 10 years, and I haven't really had a lot of friends to speak of, which is kind of sad. But since I've joined the group, it's become a springboard into other things. It's opened my eyes to what my rights are as a citizen of this state and this, of course, the country. We have our Second Amendment rights as Americans, but in Arkansas we have rights too. And not only have I learned about what my rights are, I became a concealed carrier back in 2016, and I thought, well, that's my only option, which isn't true, obviously. I found out after the fact, after paying for my permission slip, that I didn't have to have one, that I could have carried open or concealed without a permit. So, now I found out that, as a carrier, I'm actually restricted. I mean, if I'm stopped by the police for a minor traffic violation, I have to tell them, hey, I'm armed. Just letting you know that for your to ease your anxiety. And I didn't have to do that. But now that I do have a permit, I have certain rules I have to follow to be compliant with the law. I was listening to your program the other day, listening to David Ferguson speak, and he said that concealed carry is an option, it's not the option. So I want your listeners to understand that, they don't have to have a permit to open or conceal carry in this state. So, and when I say that Patriots has led me to other avenues, I found out about the campaigns on Patriots. I found out about our candidates. I found out about Jan Morgan. I found out about Linda Collins Smith. And from there, I became actively involved in both those campaigns. And, of course, I met many new and different people who have enriched my life, people that will always be in my life, who will always have my back, would give me the shirt off their back if they could. So, there's the legal aspect of knowing my rights, but there's also been kind of a social aspect. It's really kind of open, avenues for me to meet new and different people. I live in a fairly remote area. My town is only 260 people, so there's not a lot of people to know. My husband's born and reared here, and so I'm a transplant from above the Mason-Dixon. So,
whereabouts above that Mason-Dixon? Whereabouts?
Well, my parents are from Ohio, and my dad's retired military, and his last duty station was Dover Air Force Base, so that is where I moved there when I was 5, and I grew up there, and so I'm a Yankee, pretty much, and so, but I'm down here now, and enjoying it. I'm enjoying the rural aspect, but I do obviously long for being able to get to the mall in less than an hour. Jonesboro is about 60 minutes from my house, and then
so are you ex-military, Amy?
I am. I
wow,
spent
thanks for
about
your
3 years
service
in the Army.
Okay.
Well, my pleasure. It was my pleasure, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat if I wasn't as old as I am. But anyway, they wouldn't take me. I'm too old now. But yeah, I'm not retired, but I am prior service, and my last duty station was Fort Carson, Colorado, and I was deployed for a year in Iraq, and I served in a combat support hospital as a licensed practical nurse on a on a what would be like a med-surg unit.
Wow.
So, and then I use my GI Bill to go back to school, and I'm an RN, but I'm not currently working, staying at home, taking care of the kids while my husband goes off and works at places. So anyway.
Let me ask you this: is as you know, you found out about what your rights were thanks to the Patriots of Act 746 when it comes to your gun rights. You also found out about other campaigns and limited government and everything else.
Exactly.
Talk about women's role here in terms of Second Amendment rights or knowing your rights. It's a lot of times people have talked about before how the decriminalization of firearms here in the state of Arkansas is actually really much better in terms of for women in the sense that they have the equalizer now. They have the freedom to really protect themselves if they're in vulnerable situations. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think it's a social construct, but I think, for one thing, people think gun rights is a right-wing issue, and it's not. It's an American issue. And not only is it an American issue, it's not just a man's issue. It's that whole thing, if you can't beat them, join them. And my husband he has his FFL, and he likes the guns and the gun culture. And I'm like, well, if you can't beat them, join them, right? If you want to spend some quality time with your husband. So it's not just a man's issue; it's a woman's issue. And I was looking at a statistic last, just a little bit. My computer was giving me problems, so I was looking online this morning before I came on, and I was looking at an article, and it says that as far as domestic violence is concerned, nearly 3 U.S. women are killed every day by intimate partners. And like you said before, the firearm is the great equalizer. Biologically, we women are I hate to say this, weaker. I mean, genetically, yes, we are. We don't have the muscle mass. So if we're overcome in a fight and we don't know hand-to-hand combat, or we're caught unawares, we really don't have a really good chance against our assailant. So, if you have a firearm and you know how to use it, then that could be the difference between life and death for a female. I will say this: my husband and I took a concealed carry. Not concealed carry. Excuse me. We took a defensive pistol class this past weekend at Jan Morgan's range, and my eyes were open. I mean, I knew that there was problems with violence against women, but she had a couple of audio clips from 911 calls. And, Hollywood kind of gives that idea, well, if you call 911, they're going to keep you on the phone, and they're going to talk you through what you need to do, and the police are going to be there, and they're going to save the day. That's not necessarily true at all times, because in this one clip, this woman literally, and they had a countdown, she literally had 1 minute and 30 seconds before she and her young child were murdered. And she didn't have any way to protect herself.
Wow. Now,
if she had a firearm and she was, trained to know how to use it, she could have stood a chance against this assailant. And then another woman, she was at home. She had recently injured her foot. She was kind of confined to her couch. She heard her dog barking and realized that somebody was in the house. And she called 911, and they kept her on the phone and kept her oriented, and she gave him updates, and the guy came in, and it literally, when the police finally got there, he was attacking her as they got there, and it took 5 men to get him subdued.
Oh, he was on drugs, I assume.
Well, I can't remember the ins and outs of it, but yeah, we don't just, the drugs that are out there on the street now, they're laced with things. They're people could be, I don't know if you remember that, the bath salts that people, it would take multiple gunshots and tasers and just different ways to get this person down. And it took 5 men to subdue this 5 police officers to subdue this attacker.
Mm-hmm.
And in those 2 instances, hindsight's 20/20, but if they had had a firearm and were trained to use it, they may have stood a chance, and that the lady and her baby would have still been alive, and this lady would have been assaulted.
Yeah.
So yeah, the firearms are the great equalizer for women, and like I said before, it's not just owning a firearm and being able to know how to use it is not it's not a right-wing issue. It transcends party lines. I mean, if you're in our history, we didn't have parties when we started. We were just Americans, and now people think, oh well. And that's another thing I want to bring up. I mean, Patriots of Act 746 it's nonpartisan. You can be a Democrat, you can be a Republican, you can be a Libertarian, you can be of no affiliation, and you're welcome because the common bond that brings us together is our Second Amendment right.
The human right, the human right of self-defense. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and you just go ahead.
I was just going to say that in the Declaration of Independence, it says that we have our inalienable rights are the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and some people will say property, but and they are inalienable right to life. That's God-given. That is not government-given. And you have the right to defend yourself. And then you have the right to have a firearm because ultimately, we have self-preservation, but we also have our ability to defend ourselves against a tyrannical government, which we obviously have that issue at this day and time.
Mm-hmm.
We've got, I told you that, my eyes were open when I joined Patriots of Act 746. I found out about the primary campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
I also found you. I didn't know you existed. I've lived here for 10 years, and I did not know the Paul Harrell program existed. And I found out about your show, and I started watching that. I'm on Facebook Live most mornings, and I interact with people in the thread, and I learned so much. I did not realize. I knew our federal government was corrupt, but I had no idea that our state government was equally corrupt. If not, I would contend that it's about as bad, if not worse, than our federal government.
Yeah, it's not as there are not as many people involved, but because it's obviously smaller. But I feel like per capita, way less people know about what goes on in Little Rock, so that almost makes it worse because there's just not enough reporting on it. I mean, at least we have a lot more national coverage about how bad DC is, but you don't really have that with how bad the swamp in Little Rock is.
And you're not going to hear that on our local, affiliates hardly ever. I mean, I was surprised. I want to put a plug in for our friend Kenny Wallace for helping us out and going down to Little Rock and setting up shop and cueing us into what these committees are doing. And that, begs the question, when are we finally going to have this transparency that they keep touting? We have to have citizen journalists go down there and set up shop to tell us what they're doing to us. And
yeah.
I think yesterday the tax bars got together, and I haven't got to go back. I had a busy day yesterday. But I need to go back and watch the recordings. But they met today. They met yesterday to talk about how they're going to spend more of your money and not cut taxes and spend more of your money.
Well, we'll have the coverage of that at 7 because there is an article.
I don't want to steal your thunder.
No, it's fine. No, it's not a big deal. They did propose some income tax reductions and things like that. I'm gonna get into that coming. There's 3 different options, and they definitely. The question is, I think they are on a revenue neutral course. They may have a tax cut that's a reduction in revenue, but they've got to look at ending this exemption here and there so that they basically attempt to have a wash of kind of a shell game. We'll talk about that at 5, at 7. Hey, Amy, I want to know though, you guys, the Northeast Arkansas chapter of Patriots of Act 746, you guys have a meeting coming up on Saturday. Is that right?
We do. It's going to be held in Batesville at the Colton Steakhouse there on St. Louis Street. and it starts at 2:30. I would encourage, even though the official start time is 2:30, I learned the hard way that when you get there on time, you've already, the meeting's just about to begin, and you might want to show up a little earlier to fellowship and maybe have a bite to eat. So yeah, we're having a meeting the Northeast, and we rotate. We don't just have them in Batesville. In fact, the last two meetings where I attended, I went to Jonesboro to Tamales, and I went last month was in Pocahontas. And the neat thing about 746, we reach out to our local law enforcement and our local politicians and legislators. We try to have, we've invited the sheriff, and we invited the chief of police, and then of course their deputies and their sergeants. And I intend to invite. I've went around and I've put flyers out. I'm trying to. This is the first time we've had a meeting here, so there's probably not too many people in my area that know about the group. So I've been passing out business cards and putting up flyers, and we're going to have that meeting. And so if you live in this area, if you in Independence County, or even in the surrounding counties that we're talking about, Craighead County and Randolph and Sharp and Jackson and even White County, or even if you want to come from somewhere further away, we would love to have you, because, like I said, it's all about educating the citizen about what their rights are in the state of Arkansas.
And I want to add to that the fact that y'all, invite the local officials, sheriffs, politicians, state reps, and everything else. This, ladies and gentlemen, what you are hearing is the work of a grassroots organization, and taking the time, having these meetings, educating the officials, having this relationship. And it's all done in this particular context of protecting your human right to self-defense. And if your law enforcement knows and is educated about what the law is, everybody is more free. And that is what you guys are doing. And I really appreciate it. I think it's great work. And Amy Freeman, it's great to have you on the program this morning.
Great to have us. And I want to say this. We vote, people. We vote. Patriots of Act 746, the main chapter, has over 13,000 members. And the last I saw, and I don't want to misspeak, but 1,500 for, the Northeast Arkansas chapter. So we don't just invite our local law enforcement and our politicians and our legislators just to say, hey, come over and visit. We want you to know that we want you to be our voice for what we believe in the state of Arkansas. So we invite everybody to come out and find out what your rights are this Saturday if you can. All
right, Amy Freeman, I appreciate it. You have a great morning. It starts at 2:30. It's in Batesville at the Coltons there in Independence County this Saturday. If you want more information, you can also go to Facebook.com, search for Patriots of Act 746, and ask to become a member of this group, educating people about their Second Amendment rights here in the state of Arkansas. We are going to take a break. That was a fantastic interview. I'll be back here in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Is one where the people of this country voted for Donald Trump, and you say what you want to about him. The one thing he was crystal clear about was he was going to build the wall. It was a huge issue. I had no idea I had no idea it was as big as it was. I mean, I always lamented how violent things were down there and how we can't secure our borders and what an embarrassment it is. But throughout this week, I've been playing clips of Lou Dobbs. I remember when he had a CNN show, Lou Dobbs was talking about illegal immigration every single night, the violation of American sovereignty every single night. Now he's got a show on Fox Business, and he has brought attention to this, and the people, he had basically his thumb on the pulse of the people, and yet we now may have a situation where Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan say we're not going to fund the border wall. We're not going to give the American people the one thing that they voted for, the one thing that they wanted.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so coming up on the program, I do want to dive into what our guest Amy referred to. The task force on taxes had a meeting yesterday, and they voted on some plans. They have option A, then they have the governor's plan, then they have option B. I'll tell you what that is, and I'll tell you what they talked about and what they voted for. The Lieutenant Governor, Tim Griffin, issued a statement critical of one of the things they voted to do when it came to the capital gains tax. I'll have that information for you. And listen, I mean, I hope we could just agree on the definitions of words and phrases. Because if we could all agree on what a tax cut actually is. A tax cut means less money going to the government than going to it now. And that's what a tax cut is. If you lower the income tax, but then you raise taxes elsewhere in an attempt to make it revenue neutral, then that's not a tax cut. And there's a chance that it might be a net increase in revenue going to the government, and that would be a tax increase. But here's the thing, and I'll tell you this. You know, I was so happy to stand before the Faulkner County Tea Party last week and tell them that I was wrong about President Donald Trump and the things he was going to do. I was very, very critical and skeptical of President Trump during the primary. Okay, didn't support him during the primary. I voted for him over Hillary Clinton because it was the easiest decision I've ever had to make in my life. But you see, when you advocate for conservatism or limited government or exposing the status quo or whatever it is, and you're critical of it, and you have a healthy American skepticism, and you're doing this based on the principles, and then it's not about you, then when you are wrong about predicting what's going to happen or what's not going to happen, if it's not about you, then it's the best plate of crow that you ever have to eat, because it means that the goals that you're advocating are actually the things you want to happen are actually being achieved, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. So I'm critical of this task force. I call it a task force. I make fun of it mainly because it drives the folks at the Marble Palace crazy. If they actually reduce the amount of money coming from the people to the government and they actually give the people relief, I can't wait to tell you about it. If that actually happens, I'm very skeptical. I don't think it's going to. It's like a 95% chance there's no way. But if it does happen, man, it'll be great to give people credit for actually reducing the size of government by stopping the amount of money, decreasing the amount of money going to the government. And now to be a great plate of crow to eat, because that means we'll be able to say that the government was measurably reduced in size and scope. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue having a healthy skepticism of those people in power down there because they have a track record of growing government.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
And then, I interviewed this lady, Maria Espinoza, a wonderful woman who is a director of the Remembrance Project, and she's remembering Americans whose lives have been lost because of illegal immigrants who've come to this country and have murdered people. So there is an economic argument, and there's also the safety argument, and the government needs to do its job and keep us safe from, foreign actors coming in here when we can prevent this. And that's the key is, do you believe this, David? Do you believe we can stop this? Like we can prevent illegal immigration or at least severely reduce it to what it is now, from what it is now?
Well, I think the latter is the case. I think you could severely reduce it. I think that the border is a must. I think what they're talking about is $24 billion. And in the scope of our budget, $24 billion is not a big number. And so if it takes them taking part of the military budget to do that, I would suggest they do it because you can knock it in the head quite a bit. And obviously they're going to have to change the immigration rules and regs that they have. That I think that Ryan and McConnell have been an embarrassment. I think I wish both of them would go. Lord have mercy, I wish both of them would go. But I do believe that it could knock it big in the head if we put up the border wall. And now then we also have to do our part to the chain migration and a number of things that are going on there. We just have to change the laws on that.
Well,
so it's going to be a difficult battle, but it's one that I think needs to be waged.
Yeah, and you've got Senator Cotton, and you've got him, attempting to put forth that legislation to bring us towards a merit-based system of immigration. I think that's really good, really bold moves there. Let's talk about China. So I've been talking about the last couple of weeks. Donald Trump, he points out German hypocrisy, saying that you want us to protect you from Russia, yet you make Russia rich. We have China, who's a belligerent economic actor. They're expanding their military into the South China Sea. They have a giant economy. The CIA, the FBI wants to supplant. They say that they want to supplant the United States as the superpower of the world, and yet the Governor Asa Hutchinson has made trips to China and has secured these 4 companies that are coming over here to supposedly create jobs. Does that make sense? Is it hypocritical for us to be in a trade war with China and maybe even a hush-hush cold war with China, and yet we're going to make these communist Chinese companies wealthy and let them use our resources to do it?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, this whole thing, and I think I've listened to the whole show today and all the comments that you've made about the China influence in the Arkansas economy is it's just staggering to me to realize that we're out courting them when the head of the FBI says that China is our number one enemy, and what they're attempting to do to the United States through the tariffs, through all kinds of trade thefts, through the intellectual intelligence and knowledge that there's thieving from us. What is it Donald Trump was saying? $500 billion a year. And that's amazing that we would actually go out of our way as a state through the governor's office, want to attract the communist country, China, into our state, and then to support them through all kinds of tax benefits, sell them property and provide benefits, and also invite them to use our legislators as their legislators. It is just amazing and just a travesty to see that occurring in our state, and see that our governor is supporting that effort and in a big way, and it has, like you said, made many trips over there, and to see that happening into the state of Arkansas. And when the entire country is growing at 4.1% on GDP, our state is flat, has a flat growth pattern, and the fact is that we have a problem with having a state that has business. The climate for businesses is not that good, and then for us to use citizens' taxes to attract the communist country to come bring in business here is just
it's frustrating.
a great deal.
Yeah,
It is.
It's certainly frustrating. Here is Mike Preston. You mentioned the idea that when we had the Chinese here, we said that these are your legislators now. The director of the Arkansas Economic Development Commission.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Hour number 2 here. Thank you so much for being with us. The number 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. You can sound off at facebook.com/Conduit News or go to the YouTube page and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube page, Conduit News, and click the little bell to receive notifications when we post new videos. We have a new video, a special video coming out. It'll be the Patron video from last week. That was, for our subscribers early. They got to see it. It'll be uploaded today, as a matter of fact. So it has to do with street signs, smart street signs, if you will. Anyway, hey, coming up at the bottom of this hour, we'll be talking with Congressman French Hill. Excited to have him on the program to talk about his race against Democrat Clark Tucker. So the task force met yesterday. Oh, I'm sorry. I said every now and then. The task force met on taxes. And there's 3 options that they are thinking about. And they approved their top one is dubbed Option A. Then there's the governor's plan, and then there's Option B. As I was reading this story by Michael Wickline today, it was confusing because I didn't understand. They devoted like a paragraph to the governor's plan, but they didn't really call it the governor's plan. They just said Asa Hutchinson wants. And so there's Option A, then there's the governor's plan, then there's Option B. So it says here that Option A, the favorite plan of the task force is taking the state's tax tables from 3 to 1 and lowering the tax rate from 6.9 to 6.5% for people making more than $80,000 a year. That's their favorite plan, dubbed Option A. The State Department of Finance and Administration says that will reduce the revenue to the government by $276 million a year, a deeper cut than 2 other income tax proposals considered by the task force Tuesday, Michael Wickline writes. Representative Lane Jean, Republican from Magnolia, said Option A has the most support among the group's 16 members because it would simplify the individual income tax code, provide broad-based tax relief, and wouldn't repeal pending cuts for people who make less than $21,000 a year, which is part of what the governor and the legislature did back in 2017. They had an income tax reduction for people who don't really pay any taxes. But they want to make sure that they keep those intact. And you could argue that there's a little political chess going on here with that move, by the way, telling the Democrats, hey, we'll leave this in. Of course, the Democrats, they want that. But they want a welfare program and an earned income tax credit probably more than they want actual income tax relief on people who don't pay any income taxes. So that's interesting. 3 different proposals, and these recommendations aren't final. They're going to meet again. Now, under the Arkansas law that they passed, they have recommendations that are due September 1st. The task force's second choice was Governor Hutchinson's plan. to cut the top rate from 6.9% to 6%, which is what the governor announced when he had a primary opponent in Jan Morgan. He had a press conference saying if reelected, he wants to take that 6.9% income tax rate down to 6%. The state projected that Hutchinson's plan would reduce revenue by about $180 million a year. Okay, so the option 1 or option A reduces the revenue to the government only if we're looking at just this policy. I want to make that clear. We don't know what other taxes they're going to raise to make this thing revenue neutral. I mean, we know what some proposals, and they do talk about some of it trying to close off exemptions and things like that. But the governor's plan, $180 million, the option A, which doesn't take the income tax down to 6%, it takes it down to 6.5%, but it still costs more at $276 million a year. So I find that interesting. And the state projects that Hutchinson's plan would cost $180 million. The top rate reduction would apply to people with taxable incomes exceeding $77,401 a year. The governor's proposal also would keep previously approved cuts for people who make less money, according to Michael Wickline. Then they have option B, which is the third policy. Very confusing, right? You would think the third policy would be option C, but no, you have option A, then you have the governor's plan, then you have option B. It's very confusing, but anyway. Option B would trim the number of tax tables to 1 and reduce the top tax rate from 6.9 to 6.5. But it would also repeal tax cuts scheduled to go in effect January 1st for people making below $21,000 a year. The plan would instead provide some of them with earned income tax credits, which is a welfare program, and this is what the Democrats want. That's the third priority here. The state projected that option B would reduce revenue by $200 million a year. So give or take, you're essentially, whatever the income tax reduction they're proposing is essentially a $200 million decrease in revenue that they're going to have to make up somewhere else. Now, they don't have to make it up. Let me say that again. You don't have to make it up, but they're going to want to make it up. That's their philosophy. They believe that they have to, let's say, how do you say so? You have to pay for the tax cut, right? I wonder, where's all the fanfare? Where's all the hope? You know, when they had that article a couple of days ago about, quote, saving $22 million a year, they saved $22 million from the Medicaid program. But what did they say? But there were no reduction in services. Well, is it possible to cut Arkansans' taxes by $200 million with no reduction in services? Is that possible? Now, I would argue it actually is possible because of all the waste. But let's say it's not possible. Well, then you shrink the size of government and you provide services that a vast majority of the people actually use. I don't know, like our roads, like, welfare programs for the truly needy, not those who are able to work. That sort of thing, right? Anyway, just a thought. Okay, keep going down here. This is interesting. Hutchinson, see, the task force is engaged in a healthy debate on how much we can lower the individual income tax rate in Arkansas. Hutchinson said in a statement, "This is my top priority in terms of tax reform, and their support of this priority is gratifying." That's so strange. The phrasing there. "I look forward to studying the specifics more carefully and working with them to lower the tax rate." So the governor is gratified at the debate taking place in the task force meeting. Then the governor's nephew, Senator Jim Hendren said option A received a total of 16 from its members, a total tally of 16, while the governor's plan got 29, and option B received a total of 33, or a score of 33. Michael Wickline writes that earlier the divided task force voted for a plan that would require out-of-state retailers that don't have physical presences in Arkansas and have more than $100,000 in sales, or at least 200 separate sales. So, okay, they voted to essentially go forward with taxing out-of-state retailers with the internet sales tax. So Jake Files' bill lives. The proposal would also repeal a 2015 state law that would reduce the 4.5% individual income tax rate for middle-income people based on future tax collections from sellers that have no physical presence. The Finance Department estimated that the proposal would increase revenue by $35 million. Okay? So we're going to use the internet sales tax, what it appears. They're going to reduce your income taxes, but then they're going to try to get more money from you in the internet sales arena to make up for it. Again, it's a revenue neutral goal, is from what I can tell. It's not an actual tax. It's not an actual tax relief goal. It's a revenue neutral goal. It's a shell game. But they do say the most contentious debate was when Representative Jim Dotson, who's on the task force, said that, look, if we raise the revenue, if we get increased revenue from internet sales taxes, we need to immediately earmark that money to go to tax relief. Now, that's good, because that's what they used to say. You heard it all. That was the one of the carrots, if you will. Well, if we, and the Democrats didn't want to do this back during the session. They said, absolutely not. If we get this internet money, it does not all need to go to tax cuts. They wanted it to go to, I don't know, what Democrats want things to go to. So Jim Dotson here is trying to say, look, it needs to be earmarked. And Joyce Elliott, a Democrat, Senator Elliott, said, no, we don't need to earmark the revenue yesterday. And the task force voted 9-4 against Democrat Elliott's proposal, with 9 Republicans against it and 4 Democrats for it. Then it voted 10-4 to approve Dotson's proposal, with Representative Bob Johnson, a Democrat from Jacksonville, joining 9 Republicans to approve it and 4 Democrats dissenting, according to the BLR. Now, this is a good thing, as good as it could be. I mean, it's still them wanting to, they're taking advantage of the Supreme Court ruling. If you buy something online, it is discouraging that the government is saying, you know what, we're gonna tax you for it, even though it's outside of the sovereign state of Arkansas. But the Supreme Court is now saying that you have jurisdiction to tax somebody in Indiana. I think it's ridiculous. I disagree with it, but that's now the law. So they're going to try to take more money from you, and they're saying, well, if we take more money from you, we'll devote it to tax cuts. I hope that's the case. Again, they're trying to be revenue neutral. But then we have Democrat Senator Larry Teague of Nashville, and he says, I don't think that is responsible as we move forward to automatically say we're going to spend it all on tax reductions. Democrat Larry Teague goes on, I think the right thing to do is spend some of it in the surplus revenue funds and build that up and keep bondholders happy for whatever reason, and for really good business sense to have surplus in our account. I am not opposed to tax reductions, but I don't think it makes sense to devote all to tax reduction. End quote. Let's stop right there for a second. Senator Larry Teague is on the Budget Committee. I believe as a Democrat, somehow he maintained his chairmanship on the Budget Committee, or in joint budget or something. Senator Larry Teague says we need to be thinking about bondholders. That's a red flag to me. That's a red flag to me, folks. We need to keep bondholders happy. Do you remember during the special session when they had the money transferred out of the tobacco fund, the tobacco settlement fund, into this rainy day fund or long-term, whatever they want to call it? It was essentially an emergency fund, let's say, right? And they said the reason they needed to do this, they said, the governor's not going to spend the money. We promise you, even though he can spend that money. But we need to transfer it here because it's going to increase our credit rating, or it might increase our credit rating. And they trotted out these guys from financial firms, and they said, yeah, that is fine. But I had a speculation at the time, and it's never been proven wrong. I think we had a budget crisis. I think we were going to lose our credit rating, our current credit rating. I think we were going to have a decrease in it, and I think we transferred that money over to keep our credit rating, not to make us look more attractive, but to make us look the same. Because I think people were looking at Arkansas, they were seeing how over-leveraged we are and how we can't pay for our current needs, quote, needs, and it's never been disproven, and it's speculation, but I'm just saying we have Larry Teague here that might have a legitimate point, that we may have a budget crisis on our hands and nobody wants to talk about it. And maybe the government, and look, I'm not a fan of the government taking in more money. Don't misunderstand me. I think they have plenty of money. But it just goes to show you, if you want to protect, the government from being, found lacking in its management and leadership, you need that money. And this has been the whole narrative. The people in leadership need more money from the people of Arkansas. I know they're trying to cut our taxes, but they're trying to do it and redefine what a tax cut is. We have to be very careful about that. We have Senator Larry Teague here saying, look, it might be a good idea to take this increase in revenue and not devote it to tax cuts to make our bondholders happy. Well, that's when you start getting into full faith and credit stuff. That's when you start getting into credit ratings. And if you have a long enough memory like I do, you remember that they had this frenzy. It was a frenzy that we had to have this special session, and we had to transfer money from tobacco into this emergency fund. And the governor's not going to use it. He said, I'm not going to use it. And they said that this was to help our credit rating, to get a better credit rating. And I said, maybe this is to keep our credit rating, because things are really bad. And people are looking at the books, and they're trying to figure out what's a good bet here, what's a good gamble here. Just something to think about, that's all. It's just something to think about. Anyway, I know we've gone way over here. I wanted to get to one of the things that they did that drew some criticism. Michael Wickline, in other action Tuesday, the task force decided to approve proposals to repeal the exemption for capital gains over $10 million. Johnson said he doesn't believe this is needed to help 7 or 8 people a year. Repeal of this exemption may raise $4.65 million a year. So either trying to, if you're going to reduce revenue by $200 million a year, you need to get back $4 million at a time. This made Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin issued a written statement. He said, quote, written statement stating that capital gains taxes, quote, are a bad idea because they are a tax on capital and a form of double taxation. Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin goes on, we should work towards eliminating the tax, not the exemption, and pursue policies that attract investors to Arkansas to grow jobs, not run them off. So they want to end the exemption for capital gains taxes over $10 million. Well, because the rich can afford it, that's why. Then they also voted to approve a non-refundable income tax credit equal to the amount of property taxes that taxpayers paid on business inventory with a carryover period. They said that one would reduce revenue, actually. Anyway, I'm running out of time. I got to go to break. The index motor fuel and diesel tax rates based on the inflation rate of construction costs. That one we need to look into a little bit more as well. Folks, got to go back in a minute, which works closely with the governor to give away this taxpayer money and to recruit these communist companies here. This is what he said at the press conference when they were welcoming Rui to the state.
Chairman Chu, Rui, welcome to Arkansas. And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you. You'll see multiple members of the state legislative assembly. They're here to support you, and specifically Senator Caldwell, Senator Ingram, Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell. These are your senators and your representatives now. You call on them and they're going to help you. Guarantee it. And Senator English, I saw you out there too. Thank you for being here as well.
I mean, what was that? I mean, that is so offensive to me, who actually is a citizen of this state.
Right. I mean, think about it, people. They are courting a communist country, China, to come in and own a business here, and we're going to support them.
Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this. And giving them money,
I'm
folks,
sorry.
that we paid
the
into
Zipline
the government
has a 350-pound weight
to bring
limit,
in
and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the zip line. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages, because right now my feelings are so hurt, and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny, so you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Oh, you know what? Okay, fine, whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
You know, this capital gains tax business, we have to start asking ourselves, do politicians in Arkansas want people who are wealthy to remain in the state of Arkansas? Do you want that wealth to stay in the state? Or do you want more welfare recipients? You know, I mean, what are your priorities here? If that wealth is in the state, if people have more of it, they're going to invest it. Then they may start a business. They may keep their, you know what I'm saying? Like the whole thing with the corporate tax, it needs to be eliminated entirely. It's just frustrating. And you got to remember that for some reason, when Governor Asa Hutchinson got into power back in 2015, he tried to raise the capital gains taxes. Matter of fact, he did. I mean, he successfully got legislators to pass a bill that raised capital gains tax. And then people were so outraged at what had happened, they reversed it in the same session. And so now we're talking about, well, we need to eliminate this exemption for people that make $10 million or more. Why? Because they're rich and they can afford it? That's exactly why you're doing it. Because this class warfare is so tempting for you guys that somehow when you make X amount of dollars, you're now, oh, we can treat this person differently. I'm told they voted down the policy to increase taxes on cigarettes. That you would have had a revolt on your hands if you'd have done that. Anyway, we'll be right back with Congressman French Hill in just a moment.
Communist country who is
spying on us. I mean, the FBI
destroying the United States of America.
Yeah. The FBI says that they're and the CIA that they're spying on us. Like that they have investigations in all 50 states, according to reports, about their economic activities, and all roads lead to China. Then you have Tucker Carlson over at Fox News talking about how they're lobbying people in D.C. left and right like crazy. I just don't understand why. I feel like the governor needs to address this at some point. I feel like he needs to address the fact that, China is a bigger threat to us than Russia. But for some reason, because of all the hysteria with Russia, Asa had nothing but negative things to say about Donald Trump's Helsinki press conference. And yet we're doing business with the Chinese. We can't get them in here fast enough. Something doesn't add up there. There's a double standard there. It doesn't make sense.
Well, it doesn't make sense for sure, and you're going to have a press that will never ask that question of him, will not press him on that issue whatsoever, and it is as if they're complicit on it. And then you have the departments of the government down there putting out propaganda pieces like what you shared on the radio show today, promoting the CEO of the state of Arkansas that runs it like a business. There were so many things that you have to laugh at them thinking that he would. The guy has never run a business, ever. That he's possibly ever going to be able to run a business, and they're going to call it, they're claiming that he's actually run the state of Arkansas like a business. It would never happen that way. So the man is just, he's a tyrant.
Yeah, well, I know that, I disagree with his economic philosophy. I get that. If that's fine. Like, we disagree. I don't think you should take taxpayer dollars and give it to companies. Like, it's corporate welfare, whatever. I don't think it works. There's studies to back it up. We could have that argument all day long. But if you're going,
I'm with you on that. Baker's got some great information.
Exactly. But can we at least just say, okay, if we're going to do it, which all other states do this, they try to sweeten the deal or whatever. Why does it have to be China? Why China? Why not some other company? And that's the question here: is why China? Anyway,
I don't know. I don't know. I wish I had the answer, and I think that needs to be questioned, but it's apparently not going to be questioned. And the propaganda machine will kick in whenever that is questioned, because they'll revert to something else. They'll say, "Hey, we cut 100,000." Things like. When are you going to start cutting spending? Because they've increased spending about $500 million a year ever since he's been in office.
Yeah.
And they say, "Oh, but hey, we're cutting all kinds of spending. We've cut $1,000 out of the."
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. We are waiting for Congressman French Hill. We're going to get him on as soon as we have him. In the last hour, we told you about Dr. Keith Smith. Dr. Keith Smith is with the Oklahoma Surgery Center. He's booked on the program for this coming Monday at 7:30. He is a free market surgeon at the Oklahoma Surgery Center, and he's exposing the corporate healthcare system for what it is. Listen to this video here. It's fantastic.
Oklahoma, thank you for joining me. Patients continue to stream into our facility from states outside of Oklahoma, basically refugees from their local price gougers. I always ask patients, what was your next best price? Wanting to know what was the price that drove them here, led them to travel all this way. The answer is always the same. It seems to be 6 to 10 times whatever the amount is we have listed online. Recently, an uninsured patient, when I asked that question, provided the most interesting answer that I thought I would pass along. I asked him what was his next best price, and he said 20 months premiums. You only cost me 2 months premiums. It seems this patient had been insured by a carrier that was charging him $1,500 a month. He was paying $18,000 a year for his coverage, and that didn't even take into account his exposure to a large deductible. We charged him about $3,000 for his hernia repair, so he paid us 2 months in premiums. He said, "Why would I want to buy 6 hernias when all I needed was 1? I've thought about changing all of our prices online, or at least adding a column to show how many months premiums it would take to buy the various procedures we have listed online, but I thought I'd make this blog instead." Thank you. We'll see you next time.
All right. Again, that's Dr. Keith Smith. Go to the next video, though, because this next one really exposes sometimes the what happens when these hospitals and everything kind of try to ferret out doctors from their private practices. It's very, very much mob-like tactics. Listen to this one.
I'd like to relay a story I heard the other day. A physician told me that he was told that a large hospital system had revealed that they'd made around $60 million last year. Big not-for-profit hospital made $60 million. The truth is they made actually much more than that, but that's what they're admitting to. The other part of the story is what's interesting. They claim that in the process of making this $60 million profit, to which they admit, they actually lost $55 million on primary care. Let's break this down. Here's what I think they meant. I think they meant that what came over the counter to the primary care doctors was $55 million less than what the hospital system actually paid them. They claim they lost $55 million on an overhead item, basically, that they call their primary care doctors that they own and control. It wasn't that long ago that hospitals didn't own doctors. It wasn't that long ago, right here in Oklahoma City, where hospital systems competed with each other on quality and on service to attract the patients that physicians would admit to their hospital. When one hospital seemed to be having trouble in one area, the physicians would typically move to another hospital where the care or the service was better in one area or another. This kept the hospitals pretty honest. It kept the quality pretty high. Hospitals, big hospitals in particular, don't like to compete, though. They don't like to compete for the favor of physicians who are looking out for the best interest of their patient, wanting to make sure their patients are in the best spot. So hospitals, they just started buying physician practices. They overpaid for these practices and many times made physicians offers they couldn't refuse. Sometimes the offers were vicious and hostile. Like, if you don't take our offer, then here's a whole long list of strong-arm things that could and likely will happen to you. After the physician practices are purchased, many times the physicians are saddled with a new type of malpractice insurance policy, the escape from which is impossible unless the physician can come up with hundreds of thousands of dollars to purchase a tail insurance policy at the end. Also, these agreements are also saddled with no competes, so that if a physician were to decide to not renew their contract with this hospital, they would not be able to compete within a certain mile radius of that hospital. There are all manner of agreements, all of which are meant, once the physician is bought, to be trapped and never be able to escape. Many physicians have bravely resisted these offers, many times to the detriment of their practice. There are too many stories to tell of physicians whose practices have largely been ruined by hospitals whose offers were refused by these doctors. Many physicians were in a position where they could not refuse these offers. And it's both of these two groups that I would appeal now to consider attending our Free Market Medical Association conference next month right here in Oklahoma City. It is here and at this conference that you will meet people like Lee Gross and Dr. Josh from Atlas MD. These are people who have thought through ways to practice in the free market with transparent pricing, with practice models that if you walked away from the hospital, assuming that you've been taken over, you could actually have a practice. You could do it very reasonably and be very, very successful. Those of you who are resisting the hospital takeovers will be amongst friends. You'll find that you're talking to people who have done what you hoped you would do and escape much of the regulatory burden and just deal with patients directly. I'd also like to pass along that so far, our free market medical...
Again, Dr. Keith Smith, he's going to be on the program Monday. Very knowledgeable guy with the Oklahoma Surgery Center. They know how to essentially get around this government-controlled way of doing things. They can give you very competitive pricing. They actually have a diagram. If you go on their website, if you need a surgery done, you click on, they got like a diagram of a human body, and you just click on the part of the body that you need surgery on, and you click on it, and then they list all the surgeries that can be done on your head or your arms or whatever, and then you and then you see the price list is just ridiculous. You know what the insurance companies would charge $50,000 for. I mean, you get for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 there. It's crazy. It's unbelievable. And it's really, really interesting stuff. But what he is exposing in these videos, I would encourage you to check him out and subscribe to that channel. What is that channel, Joe? I can't see it. Can you tell me what the channel is that this... Surgery Center, Oklahoma. Yes. Surgery Center space OK. So look up Surgery Center space OK for Oklahoma, and subscribe to them because he's got even more recent videos and everything else. And it's just fascinating that there are other people that are doing things outside of the status quo system, and I'm all about being outside the status quo at this point. It's fascinating that he talks about how doctors are held hostage. And I thought to myself, are there any doctors out there that are listening to this program that completely understand what he's talking about? The process of this corporate takeover of healthcare, forcing people out of their private practices, making it hard. And he has this whole he's got this whole thing about how sometimes these hospitals go to city councils. They change laws when another hospital maybe wants to start up, or you have a group of doctors that maybe want to try to do something by themselves, independent of the healthcare status quo elites at the time. It is fascinating what this guy's been able to achieve. And I'm reminded of some of these other, this is for surgery, but then you have these primary care operations that are starting to pop up, where you basically pay the equivalent of a Netflix subscription every month, and you get access to, if something happens, unlimited treatment for colds and sicknesses and things like that, or even broken arms, but not the big stuff like surgery. And I'm just thinking, wow, when the free market actually, if you took, and this is, I've often wondered this, but you're terrified of the catastrophic stuff, right? The surgery, or catastrophic, like car accident, cancer, some sort of debilitating long-term disease. Yes, insurance. That's what you need insurance for. That's the whole point of having insurance on your car, by the way. You don't have insurance, and I know they offer this now, but nobody really gets it. You don't have insurance on your car so that you turn it in for an oil change or for a checkup, or you don't have car insurance so if your water pump goes out, or your I don't know, I'm not a car guy, or the belts or whatever go out, your insurance doesn't pay for that. You have car insurance in case your car is totaled or you total someone else's car, and it's a catastrophic event, right? That's what car insurance is for, and that's what health insurance should be for. But when you have these little co-ops that are popping up, it makes it really reasonable. And so I start to think to myself, as somebody who's on a budget, who's got a newborn, I think to myself, okay, how much am I paying in a month's time for health insurance? And I personally use Liberty Health Share because it is ridiculously inexpensive compared to Blue Cross Blue Shield and everything else. But how much am I paying a month? What if I took that premium that I'm paying a month for myself, my wife, and my daughter, and I had it in a savings account somewhere. I mean, how fast that money would accrue for a $3,000 surgery. $3,000 surgery, not a big deal anymore, right? Or you take, $50 a month for your whole family, and you have one of these doctors, primary care doctors, that does these subscriptions, not for surgery, but for your colds, your sicknesses, and they get these deals with pharmaceuticals and antibiotics, and break your arm, no big deal. It doesn't. I've paid my subscription, and because not everybody, it's kind of like it operates around the principle of if you. If everybody goes to the bank and tries to take out their money, it'd be a big deal. But that's not going to happen. If you're a doctor and you do one of these subscription services, not everybody is going to get sick. Chances are, unless the Chinese attack us or something, not everybody's going to get sick at the same time. And so it's the same concept of this umbrella insurance concept, but it all pays for itself, and it's profitable for the doctor. Anyway, there are free market solutions out there to make this stuff way less expensive than it is. The corporate healthcare industry, we should start calling them the corporate healthcare industrial complex. It's gotten out of control. It is absolutely ridiculous that people are paying these premiums for insurance and their deductibles are high. It's not even worth it anymore. You have it because you got to have it, right? You want to protect your family. You want to be able, if something bad happens, you're hedging your bets. You got to have it. But at the same time, it's extremely worrisome that we're in a situation where you have more and more people in between you and the doctor. That's really what it comes down to. More and more people between you and the doctor. The more people that are there, the higher the price is. I think that's pretty much the bottom line. Hey, folks, welcome to the program. We've got Congressman French Hill on the line. Congressman Hill, welcome to Conduit News this morning. Do we have him? Can you hear me? I can't hear him.
Yes, sir. Hey.
Yeah. How are you doing? Just talk a little bit about the campaign. How's the campaign going so far?
Oh, it's going great. We're headed to Morrilton this morning and out in all 7 counties talking to our citizens, talking about what's important to them. And what I've seen concretely all year long is how much better the economy is going, how much more optimistic our small business people are. Last week I was at Greenbrier in Faulkner County, and just business is good at every place I stopped. They're having trouble finding employees. They need more workers, and that's exactly the kind of economy that we want to produce more tax revenues, more opportunity, higher wages, everything we want that's good about the free market system.
Yeah, and a lot of this stuff, certainly has started, with the exit of the Obama administration and the Trump administration comes in. You guys are able to pass those tax cuts. People are optimistic now, especially flyover country, and yet you have a Democrat opponent, and you got to wonder, what does he want to undo all of the stuff that has happened so far that's so positive for the people of Arkansas and your district?
Well, what we've seen is a commitment by Nancy Pelosi, the minority leader in the House, to reverse the tax cut. She's going to reverse the tax cut. She says that shouldn't be done. And yet it was a bipartisan agenda for 30 years to end the double taxation of profits for American corporations who had operations abroad, to encourage people to move their companies home, make capital investments in the U.S. This was a bipartisan idea. This was Bill Bradley's idea in the 1980s. This was Danny Rostenkowski's idea in the 1980s, and not a single Democrat had voted for it. And now Mrs. Pelosi says she would reverse the tax cut and unleash, a whirlwind of negative regulatory actions, and not to mention that the Democrats want to impeach Donald Trump, and that's their principal objective if they take the House back.
And you make great points. The last one there about impeaching the president, that's exactly right. That's what they want to do. They want to stop all of this stuff that's going on. They have such a strange, irrational hatred. The media does, but the Washington D.C. Democrats, they certainly do. It's like they believe that the country's going to be done away with if they don't take back the House. And that's why, Congressman Frenchill, that's why I wanted to have you on the program. And I know we're going to have you on the program throughout the rest of the campaign season, because I wanted to highlight to the people of your district, the 2nd District, and the rest of the state, how important, how integral you going back to Washington is to represent the 2nd District, to make sure that the Republicans maintain control of the United States House of Representatives.
We want to have the kind of pro-growth economic policy that we have in this administration with this Congress. We roll back the most expensive regulatory burdens of the Obama 8 years in office. We've done the Tax Cuts Act. I think those are principal contributors to why we're now growing above the economic average since World War II, which was about 2.5%. Our economy now is growing over the last 16, 18 months at about 3.1%, and last quarter grew at 4%. But we have unemployment now down at a level not seen since 1969 when Richard Nixon was president. So we want to keep this economic performance. We want to keep this optimism. And this is something that we've had a combined leadership in the House and Senate with the Trump administration. And I think it's number one. But number two is, look, the Democratic Party is for open borders. They have blocked President Trump's compromises to clean up our broken immigration system and improve our border security. It's ridiculous. I can't tell you, I've made 4 trips to the border, and it's all I see is exactly what we should do. And the Trump administration plus the Congress negotiated, worked hard for months, and came up with what I thought was a reasonable set of compromises to take a step towards fixing the broken immigration system and, more importantly, getting the money and personnel we need on the border. Again, blocked by Democrats. And so this is another challenge, and there are many more, but I want to keep our country going in the right direction towards a smaller government, more respectful of states, and more respectful of individual liberties. And we're going to reverse that trend if we go the other way.
You know, I wasn't exactly thrilled with President Trump's DACA concessions, his offer to the Democrats, but it ended up being a really it exposed the Democrats. The Democrats would rather the Dreamers or the DACA children remain victims, in my opinion, to exploit political power, to maintain political power, than actually solve the problem. I mean, and you had the president saying, I'm willing to come to the table. I'm willing to fix this. I'm willing to make some people on the right and in my base upset, but I want to build the wall. And the Democrats said, no, never mind. We're really not serious about fixing the program. Congressman Frenchill, should we build the wall?
We should build the wall. I've been to California, to all the way to Texas, and we need a border barrier along the wall where it fits. We could use natural barriers where we have big, robust geographic and topographical boundaries. We need smart technology on the border that allows us to use infrared technology and sensor technology, just like we do in the military. And we need adequate manpower, both in the Border Patrol and in our sheriffs along the counties there. You need manpower, you need technology, and you need a border barrier where it fits. Here's what the Border Patrol says about walls, the fencing, no matter what kind of fencing you're describing. If you have fencing with a parallel road system with it, plus technology, the Border Patrol tells me, look, it shapes the field of action. It compels people who are trying to smuggle drugs or people into the country to change their course of behavior, and it makes it easier to ascertain, catch, and prosecute, or block their attempt to even get into the United States. And that's what we want. And that's why I supported the combination of border security and modest immigration fixes that the president proposed. And Chuck Schumer shut the government down over it. He's not serious about fixing this problem.
You know, you're exactly right. They are not serious about it. They definitely want the open borders. And, you know, here's I said this the other day, French. I know you've got to run, and we do too. But, you know, part of the Make America Great Again agenda, I think, is trying to get border security to the point where we don't have parts of the border that are some of the most dangerous places on the planet when it comes to the violence, the drugs, the sex trafficking that goes on. I mean, we have a responsibility to secure our borders for the protection of the citizens that live here. Don't you agree?
Absolutely, and it can be done in a professional, humane, appropriate way. But we have to have the manpower and the technology, and we do need more judges. In the appropriations for FY 18 and 19, we got 100 more judges down on the border. That speeds up the adjudication of cases of people who are being prosecuted, which is good. We want speedy justice on people who come to the border, whether it's to seek asylum or they've been caught trying to come into the country illegally. And so we need improved justice, we need improved interior enforcement, and we need improved border security.
All right, Congressman French Hill, I appreciate it so
Thank
much.
You, Paul.
Thank you. All right, have a great
Talk
day.
soon.
We'll talk to you soon. Folks, we got to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed roller lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com.
Out of the budget.
Well,
okay, but you still increase spending by $500 million.
I will tell you this as we wrap things up, David Crow. This hypocrisy. I am not the only one. Conduit News is not the only one to have noticed this hypocrisy with China. There are people who have contacted me who are concerned, and so we're going to continue following this story and see where it gets.
Good.
David Crow, we got to take a break. I will see you at Larry's Pizza today in Conway for the Faulkner County Tea Party Luncheon. Thank you for inviting me to speak, and it's always a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. I'll share that salad with you today down at the pizza.
Okay, sounds good.
At the Larry's Pizza. Okay,
I'm going to have ranch, though. I am going to have some ranch dressing with it. Okay, all right. Thanks, David. I appreciate it. Bye. Folks, we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
People on Facebook sounding off Build the Wall. It's really, really good stuff. You can always find us and comment live while we're doing the show if you go to facebook.com/Conduit News. Or you can do the same on the YouTube channel. And I keep funneling people to the YouTube channel. Want you to like and subscribe and send us on our way to being discriminated against and censored. But we want you to like and subscribe just because with Facebook, something's weird is going on with Facebook. I'm telling you, there's something. I just have a gut feeling that Facebook is, I don't know. It's certainly on the decline, but not in the users. I just telling you, I think. I mean, there's talk of maybe some SEC investigations into people who sold stock early in Facebook because they know that the shareholders know some of the stuff that's been going on behind the scenes with user information. I think it may be much larger than that whole Cambridge Analytica thing. So Joe says we're going to start one called FaceSpace. And the thing is, Facebook could go the way of MySpace. And that's so we always want you to know you have the YouTube venue or avenue platform there as well. And we're gonna wrap up the show. We're gonna be back here tomorrow. Want to thank Congressman French Hill for being on the program. Want to thank Patriots Vec 746 Amy Freeman for being on the program this morning. And we will have another 2 hours of conservative talk radio ready for you tomorrow at 6:05 Arkansas. Be safe.